time what I was.
I don't automate anything. Everything's a manual process for me. Manual processes all around. What's up, everyone? This is Jason Tucker, and this is WPwatercooler. This is episode number 283. We don't have a topic. We're gonna totally talk about some fun stuff. So let's go around the room real quick, get everyone introduced.
That's a 3.
Dan. Oh my gosh, Dan. We haven't had you on for a long while.
It's been some time.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I'm sorry. I'm kind of like relocating it.
This is a good time to do that, right? When the show starts and your introduction starts, you're like, oh, so right now, though, I'm going to just move. Not in the half an hour beforehand.
Yeah, I know, right?
So we're going to find out the Wi-Fi
dogs. My dogs were, if you can see them, complaining about going outside. So I'm like, all right,
well,
dogs outside.
My dogs are the only dogs that are allowed to dominate this show. All right, let's just be clear.
Hey.
So Dan,
you're a dog now, too.
About yourself real quick.
He has 2 dogs.
I have 2 dogs. They're both purebred Siberian Huskies. They're both rescues. I've fostered about 4 or 5 other Huskies.
And then what do you do with WordPress?
I'm mostly a back-end developer. I've worked for Alley Interactive, Crowd Favorite, and Web Dev Studios, as well as freelanced for, I guess, about 5 years now.
Cool. Well, it's good to have you on, man.
Yeah, good to have you on. Thank you.
What about you, Russ? Tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm Russ Lair, and I do WordPress stuff in Las Vegas. I had a class last week that was awesome, and yeah, I had a lot of fun. Say like that topic last week on WP Watercooler. If you guys go hit the back button, go watch that. I had a lot of fun, and I hope we have more conversations like that. So
good. No, I'm definitely wanting to really model the show after that one particular episode. How about you, Say?
I like that we're 283 episodes in, and the 282nd episode, we're like, that one was good. That one was actually a pretty good episode.
We're catching our stride.
We're like, maybe we found a thing. Like, who knows?
I like new and interesting topics, and I feel like that was very new and interesting and refreshing, and that's why it was one of my favorites. I love the WP Watercooler, period, but that was one of my favorite episodes.
Hey, what's up? I'm Say. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress, at Say Read Media on all the things, and I have cool projects in the works. And someday I'll be able to talk about them, but not now.
Awesome. Well, it's always good to have you on, Say.
I'm always on. Why do you say that? Like, I'm literally always here. So that means it's always who's
never here is Steve. Steve, tell us a little about yourself.
I am Steve Zengen. I am the founder of Zeek Active, and I
allegedly
WordPress Meetup.
Allegedly.
Awesome, man.
Hey, when Say does her preach, teach, and stuff, can we get like the little bouncy ball, kind of like at karaoke? Like, can we do that?
We should all do that together. I make WordPress, teach WordPress, preach WordPress, blah, blah, blah. I need it.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me at Jason Tucker on Twitter. My website is jasontucker.blog, and I do this show as well as another show called WP Blab. Yesterday was a really good episode of WP Blab. If you didn't see it, James Laws was on. We were talking about some really cool stuff regarding loss leaders and how you can take products that you're building and definitely be able to make good money off of them by working out those loss leaders. So go take a look at that. It's good stuff.
I like the marketing term of loss leader coming in because WP Lab's a marketing show. So I like that. What they really mean is freemium. Dun, 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 dun. It's the same word.
I totally loved when he was saying, like, if you're going to have this product page, but your links to all your stuff is on this other thing that I have to click, he's like, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I was like, thank you for saying that.
I'm just wondering if everything Jason says is good. Because he said good a couple of times there, or great.
Look, I graduated high school. I graduated high school, and that's it. So I didn't get to read any of the big books that anybody else did. I don't have like a bunch of books on my walls or anything like that. So yeah, I have a very small vocabulary.
You can totes borrow some of mine if you want. I've got a few.
You know a girl, huh?
I know a woman with some books.
woman.
All right. Anyway, Russ, you taught a class last week, and you had some thoughts you were thinking about sharing with us.
So my class was catching people up. So like we said last week, like we just want to get people caught up in the conversation to where like when we mention Gutenberg, they're not like, well, what's that? And we're like, well, it's this thing that you edited the post editor, and they're like, well, what's that? Right? We want to catch people up. And like my thoughts my thoughts are.
You know what my thoughts is.
See, I went to the same high school as Jason Tucker. Like that's what it is. but
it's all right. It's good for the blanket listenership that we have.
My thoughts are is that there are numerous resources to learn WordPress. There's these things called Meetups. There's these things called WordCamps. There's these things called podcasts. And like my kind of fear is like every month I get in front of our WordPress Meetup group and I'm like, hey, I want to show you this cool thing about this plugin I found, and they're like, well, it's a little too advanced. And I'm like, all right, so here's the dashboard. Here's how we get you caught up, and like that's not an option either. So like, how do we help people who want to learn WordPress, and like how do we get more feedback from the community? Because like I have struggled to get people to interact, and like I will do any topic live on scene. Just give me a suggestion, and it's
you might want to clarify that.
No,
when in Vegas,
any topic.
It's Las Vegas, and we're a 24-hour town.
any WordPress topic? Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like
I've reviewed your code.
See, that's what I'm saying. You're happy with it.
Well, I reviewed it.
Sure, okay.
Ooh.
It's a fight down.
I mean, tabs versus spaces, or what? What do we got going on here? Tabs versus spaces?
Commas or tabs?
Tabs, yo.
All the above. So, like, what I'm saying is like, I want people at a meetup to get the most out of it that they want. Whether that's coming to a meetup and they ask the question that has been driving them nuts for a month, or like they have a question about like this WordPress thing. How do we do? Like, I'm happy to show that, but like my fear is that like whatever topic I have is too advanced. But like this is what I do in my day to day, and we're not getting suggestions. How do we bridge that gap? How do we help? Because I want to come to a WordCamp with a brand new topic, and like really you get something out of it instead of like WordPress multi-site 101 again.
Yeah.
Well, so I think that's a problem, and even what you were talking about in terms of like WordCamp, I haven't applied to speak at a WordCamp for a while now, because I am conflicted about audience. And honestly, whenever I do a talk, I need to know who my audience is so that I can, make that talk relevant to them. Otherwise, I'm just up there, talking, and I can hear the sound of my own voice if I ever listen to the show back. So if I wanted to do that, I could just do that. But I think that I have felt conflicted at WordCamps. Also, really the same thing happens at Meetups. Is who is it that we're talking to? Actually, I asked that question on this show also. Are we talking to people who are just learning about WordPress? Do people who are just learning about WordPress and just being introduced to WordPress even know that WordCamps and Meetups exist? I mean, beyond the prompt that they're probably ignoring in their dashboard. So they're probably not beginner level, but what are the people that are going to those events? Like, it's like, who are we talking to? Who are these people, and what level of WordPress are they at? Because I think what you're trying to do, Russ, is talk up here about, what we're trying to do with Gutenberg and whatever. And then, like you said, you tried to offer a class for beginners, and then no one showed up to that, right? Or some people did. I didn't mean like no one showed up to your class, but.
I mean, I was alone in my thoughts.
Well, I think that Say brings up a really, really good point. Like,
it was Russ's point, but okay.
Or Russ's point.
I just made it for her.
This might not go well, so Say can take all the credit for it.
All right, cool. Say's point.
I
haven't spoken in a while for multiple reasons, and Say and Russ, similar reasons. But I usually start my talks off with like raise your hand if you're a developer, raise your hand if you're a designer, raise your hand if you're a business owner, and on the fly, I need to switch what I'm going to talk about.
Right.
Isn't that too late though? I mean, isn't that too late? Because you're like, hey, my talk's going to be about advanced custom fields. So raise your hand. How many people have used WordPress? And then like one person's like, I've used Weebly, and like the rest of the room is like, what's a WordPress? And you're like, crap, why are you guys in this room?
What we attempted to do at WordCamp Orange County was to actually tag each of the talks as beginner, developer, business, design, right? It's not perfect. But next year, what we're talking about is also having people self-identify themselves when they buy a ticket.
I identify as what they are.
But I guess to go back to Russ's part with this is that it's at a meetup. So the meetup is like, you know, I went and opened the room. I went and bought the pizza. We had, you know, either beers or drinks or whatever there. We went through all this stuff. So I've done all this song and dance, and I sit down and I'm like, I'm going to talk about this thing, and then the whole room is full of noobs, and none of them are wanting to learn about any of the high-end stuff I'm talking about.
I put an agenda out like 2 weeks before our meetup, and I'm like, hi, Russ will talk about anything you want, give me a suggestion. And then like 20 minutes before the meetup, I'm like, well, I'm free to speak about whatever I want. And then it's like, well, that's not what we wanted to learn. So I'm happy to do it. And where do we go? But my other point is that like I am practicing. I have been going for about a month and a half now for my WordCamp Minneapolis talk about blogging, like with your voice. And like Jason said, it's a little too late if I get to WordCamp Minneapolis and I'm like, hey, who's never heard of Google Keep? Like, I can't switch and like start talking about Evernote. I've done no research on Evernote.
Right.
So like, I want a little heads up, like just like, hey, how many people are using Beaver Builder? And at least like then I can kind of prep something for Beaver Builder. But to do it on the fly, I feel pretty confident I could still do that. I hate doing that, is what I'm trying to say. It's like, you know, I want a little user action.
All of the work that you did, all of the slides that you've created, if you have done that work and then you get there and you're like, hey, this audience is totally different, you're now giving less quality, less quality.
It's so easy for you to say.
I don't know. I was struggled with that one. A presentation that is of less quality because it wasn't the thing that you've got, you know, slides for and, you know, screenshots of. It's not the direction you're going to. So you may be providing that information, but that's then the same thing as what you're doing at a meetup when someone just tosses out a topic and you're like, here's what I know about this topic. And so WordCamps are, you know, the idea is it's supposed to be more in-depth knowledge, you know, more about a topic. And I think that this is a struggle in the WordPress community because of the age of the community and where it is. Yep. I think
we're all getting old.
Well, I didn't mean that, but okay. Take it how you feel.
My knees hurt.
Well, but even in this community, like it's not about age. There's plenty of young people who have been in here since they were 18, and there's plenty of older people who are, you know, brand noobs. Yep. But like, the thing with the meetups especially is like once you are kind of in it and you know where to go for articles online and you're maybe socializing, you've met people at a thing, so you're not going there for a social thing anymore, you kind of age out of meetups, right? Like you kind of like, not age-wise, but like knowledge-wise.
Yeah.
Now it sounds like meetups are like foster homes and like you age out.
Well, they're
I completely did that. Like, I don't go to local meetups in Minneapolis anymore. I know all of the people. I know all of the information, and if I have questions, I can just DM them on Twitter.
Yeah, sure.
But I guess what happens with that is if you don't have the knowledgeable folks coming to the meetups that are kind of feeding into the meetup more, then you just have a bunch of noobs that are there with one experienced person that has some time on their hands to sit there and talk about it. And so what happens is you end up with all these people that are in that room that are very inexperienced, and they're only going to talk about inexperienced things, and they're never going to hear any of the conversations of like, hey, have you ever used this plugin? Hey, have you ever used this type of function? Hey, have you ever looked at object-oriented programming? Hey, have you ever... And all it is like, how do I make my widget move from the left side of the page to the right side page? And then when you do that, I want it to be blue. And you're like, yeah, but there's more to it than just that.
So like last week, our meetup, I was like, listen, I was like, I will do anything live, and like
You gotta qualify.
I mean, you guys know how clerks do
Then the
it.
lions walked in, then
I've
the
heard that
lions
about
walked
you.
in, and then the
So-
tigers walked in.
No,
And he's juggling stuff.
so like I wanted to enhance somebody's website. I wanted somebody's website at the end of my meetup, or at the end of our meetup. I wanted somebody's site to do something it currently wasn't doing. And so like nobody reached out, and then like a couple did, but they were like, here, sign this non-disclosure, because like, you know, like
What?
I'm not going to steal your Facebook idea, nor do I want to, even like I probably could, let's be honest, but I don't want to. like again, like I want to help people, and I'm like, hey, you're having an issue, and I'm like, can you show me a link? Can you show me an example? Like, I want to make sure I'm giving you the right advice. And they're like, well, my page isn't up yet. And I'm like, well, then I'm kind of just, you know, stabbing in the dark here, and like that doesn't help me. It doesn't help you, and honestly, I kind of feel like if you go home and you take whatever advice I give you, you're gonna be like, oh, that Russ guy, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, I'm really doing me a disservice here.
Yeah, that's
This
actually
is
really
why I
true,
record
because
my meetups.
when you're giving that kind of general information, people are like, oh, well, that didn't apply to me, so it wasn't useful. But you can't make, like, every site is different, every goal is different, so it is hard to get up there and deliver information just without specific examples or a specific site that is useful to even 10 people, let alone 20 people, or let alone that number of people on a regular basis when you're just like coming up with stuff. I mean, like, it's not like everyone's creating presentations for every meetup that they're doing every week, right? It's a lot of Steve standing up there and being like, let me share with you what I know. You know, it's all a big happiness bar. And like, I think this speaks to the greater issue of what's going on with the WordPress community, in terms of this is one of our biggest strengths, right? Is this community. And all of us specifically here in this particular, you know, group, we've all been part of that community. We've done the WordPress speaker circuit, WordCamp circuit. We've done, you know, all of the meetups and the networking. And I feel like those things, because they proliferated so much, you know, now there's a WordCamp everywhere, and there's a meetup all the time of like everything. And at a certain point, even for this show, right, we're talking about WordPress every single week. Like, how far can you go? How much? I mean, obviously we have no problems. 83 episodes in.
Well, now that we got it right, we don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, we're just done. Okay, bye. But you know what I mean? Like the meetups and the topics, like, they can't, there's a limit to how much you can talk about that and how useful you can be every month, every week for, you know, that same audience. It's
I think that kind of goes, or at least for me, it goes back to what Jason was talking about. Like, hey, should the experts be going to the meetups and doing stuff? Yep. And at a point, we all just need to like take a deep breath ourselves and stop and let the community take care of itself.
Sure.
Well, but what is the community? Are we not part? We are the community, the people that are there. So Russ should give his meetup over to someone else to run, because someone else is going to be able to explore.
If Russ burns out, I'm not going to blame him for stopping.
Well, so we did. John Hawkins said he needed a break. I took it over, and like for me, when I took over the Vegas meetup, I said, like, how do I come in this like I'm a noob? And I started doing presentations at a beginner level. I talked about permalinks. I talked about the settings page. I talked about like just the dashboard. Like, I went 2 years as a beginner, and then like the same people are still like, well, I don't know what you mean by this. Like, I did roll back. I did try to give in. Yeah. And like, even then, you're still telling me you haven't found anything useful. Okay, let me reach out and say, what are you going to find useful? But like that, I have no submissions on my comment or on my Gravity form on the meetup site. So like, where's that feedback? I need something. Give me something, and I will come up with the topic. I promise. I just need
this, you know, these meetups are a stream of consciousness, and you can't repeat yourself over and over and over again, because if you do, you're just gonna, going back to what I said earlier, you're just gonna have the same people talking about the same stuff over and over again. And you're gonna have the developers, they're gonna do this in their chair. They're gonna go, dude,
Yep.
I made it almost all the way around this time. That's awesome.
Then you have to start segmenting your meetups, right? So we've got 4 meetups in under OC WordPress now. We've got general, developer, design, and then women who WP, right? So if you segment them, people will sort of self-select. It still doesn't work perfectly, but it's better.
That's more social, honestly. Like, really, at the certain point, you know, is women who WP, is the content of WordPress different than a meetup in Orange County? No, it's just like a different group of people.
That one's a little, you know, specific, but the design meetup, you're gonna go talk about design. The developer meetup, we're gonna talk about developing for WordPress.
Did you guys do that, Steve, because you noticed this so long ago, or was it just a decision like, hey, we probably should just have different things? But like,
no, we got the feedback from the audience, and we're just, at first we were lumping everything into one meetup, and when we talk about developer stuff, you'd look at half the room and their eyes were glazed over, right? So we've been doing this, the segments for several years now.
Yeah, you have developer, beginner,
Design.
and design, right? Those are your basic things. And so you're still doing these meetups every month. What is your experience in terms of the effect that Russ is talking about with a segmented group? Are you still experiencing the same thing, but on like a lesser scale of, content repeat, that type of thing?
I mean, there's always going to be content repeat, right? Because at the general meetup, you typically get the same question every time. When you open it up for what do you want to talk about, somebody always says, I want to talk about security, right?
What's a custom post type?
Plugin. Yeah, but that's okay.
I mean,
there's new faces all the time too. So,
And Russ, is your meetup split at all, or is there just one WordPress meetup specific for that?
We have one WordPress meetup. We meet the third Wednesday of every month, and we have myself, John Hawkins, Robert Gilmer, Manny Costa, Michael Crayman, who does the WooCommerce meetup, and we have Matt Campbell from My Wedding Songs. Like, we have 1 million people here that can talk about anything, because this dude's doing affiliate marketing, I'm doing this stuff. We have 1 million topics that we could talk about, but like nobody makes that suggestion. And then we come with the same stuff every week. Like that's where we're at.
Do you have the ability to do a breakout session? So start with like a half an hour of everybody together, and then break out into developer groups or design groups or blogger groups?
That's interesting.
My other suggestion would be,
I got ideas. That's all I got is ideas.
I guess it's why we keep you around.
For me,
the other thing you can do.
Can I break in for a second?
Yes.
No.
Dan from Minneapolis, you're on. Go ahead.
All right.
First time caller, long time listener.
About 25,000 feet. High as hell. And yeah.
You have 6 minutes, so make your comment. There's a line.
Yes, we can. Anyway,
Okay, so
right.
what I was gonna say.
Is there something that needs to be said here? Or?
No, I just wanted to say bye. I need to drop off. I have a call in 5 minutes. So.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for showing up. All right.
That was the longest goodbye I think I've ever heard on this show.
It really was, definitely.
So the way that I approach this with my meetup is I record my meetups, and I put the meetups on Facebook, and I go, hey, you missed the thing where I talked about how to use a custom post type, or how to use, why is it that when I change something, my permalinks are all jacked up? You go in there and you hit save permalinks, even if you don't think it's going to do anything, push it anyhow, and it'll probably fix it. Any of those sorts of things. Yeah, push Control Delete on your Windows computer and throw it away and buy a Mac. Like one of those types of things. So talk about it. And so, I'll sit down and go, here, I've already recorded that for you. Go over there and go watch it. And so, I've been talking about recording meetups since 2013. So since 2013, I've talked about
there's content.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to do it, nothing's changed. Like you can still just stick a computer on, just stick your phone onto a tripod and hit record, and then no one's going to ask you those questions anymore. But they're going to say like,
ask. They're still going to ask.
No, but you know what I've done? I've actually have loaded up the video and hit play, and just went like, okay, we can sit here and watch the video on how to push the permalink button. No problem. Okay, here we go. Permalink button done. All right, so I didn't have to talk about that. Now let's go on to the other thing. But, show them that the resource exists. And no one knows that WordPress TV even exists. Like, nobody that shows up to a meetup knows that WordPress TV even exists. They just go like, wait, there's a WordCamp? There's a bigger one of these? You're like, yeah, and by the way, we recorded all of them, and feel free to go take a look at all the stuff that's over there.
We prefix our meetup with, here is our meetup website, and on this website, there is links to our Facebook, and to this, here's that. I found 2 YouTube tutorials that are like 10 minutes long, and they're like 30 videos that will explain WordPress to a T, and that is exactly how I learned. And like that page gets 0 traffic. Like I have set up that we do prefix with, there's this thing called WordPress TV, there's this thing called WordCamp, here's my personal email, here's my phone number. I've given my card out to people, and like they still haven't reached out. Like I feel like I have opened up every floodgate that there is, and it concerns me that I still hear like, oh, well, that group's not doing anything for me. Like here I am.
What they mean when they say that, Russ, is that you're not building their site for them. That's what they mean when they say that. So I'm sorry. There's a lot of that where people are wanting people to just do things for them, right? So there's that element. There's also the element of people not knowing what it is that they don't know. So you ask a suggestion and they're like, the only thing I can't know, because they don't know what's possible. The thing.
How'd that go?
I'm not doing it again. I'm a two repeater and you're out. But what I wanted to say was, as a suggestion for you and getting suggestions for your meetup, Russ, is you could go manual and use some paper and be like, hey, at the end of the meetup, write down suggestions for a topic. Because,
and they walk out with the paper.
Yeah, well, maybe not. But or at the end of it is when people have been thinking of things and thinking of questions, and they would be like, oh, these are the things I want to know that I remember now. By the time the next meeting rolls around, they've forgotten all of that. So if there's a way for you to get that information out of their heads before they leave today, then you can say, all right, now we have our agenda for next month, because this is what people didn't get from this meeting.
And that meetup site is big. Like what I do when I'm sitting there and somebody else is presenting, because I have 3 people that are just like how you have, Russ. I have 3 people that are part of this whole meetup. I'll actually put in comments all the links to all the things that we talked about, 1 comment after a time, so that way they can start a thread and be able to talk about this stuff. And it seems to work, because I get people that, I put bit.ly links on everything so I can see if people are actually using them or not. And I'm like, oh, okay, a person actually clicked on that link. That's cool. People are actually using this stuff versus me spending a bunch of time on stuff that no one's ever going to do and use.
Tracking's your friend.
So you have a final comment, go for it.
My biggest takeaway is that when I came into WordPress, I realized that I had somebody like a John Hawkins, and I wanted to make sure that I was asking him direct questions, and like I gave him 2 questions. I didn't want to hit him with 1,000. I hit him with 2, and I came prepared, and I took it upon myself to learn. I'm happy to do that with anybody, and I welcome it. Help me help you.
That's the best thing to end on ever. Help us help you.
Help us help you.
Tell us what you need to know.
Well, folks,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go, Russ. You got one more.
Nope, I'm done.
All right. Well, folks, thank you very much for hanging out with us around the water cooler. We really appreciate it. Go to our website at WPwatercooler.com. You can click on the links to subscribe, WPwatercooler.com/subscribe. If you have some money and you want to throw it at us and you want me to talk about your product at the beginning of the show, we can totally do that. WPwatercooler.com/sponsor. Talk to y'all later. See you there. Steve, you did a good job last week.
Thank you.
Bye.